What is up, everybody? This is your boy Dedrian 180, and this is my review for the October 9th episode of WWE Monday Night Raw. Like, share, comment, subscribe, hit the notification so that way you're notified when the City of Wrestling drops its latest content. Follow me, Dedrian 180, on TikTok, Twitter X, Facebook, Instagram, and whatever platform else is out there. Man, it's good to be back. Good to be doing reviews and everything. I'm going to be doing this more frequently. But man, tonight's WWE Monday Night Raw, man, this was a very good episode. It was reported earlier in the day that Triple H has taken control of pretty much all of creative, which is a good thing. But man, you really saw a lot of his story tropes and angles and pacing throughout this show. I know there was a moment where there was a segment going on and in the background something else was happening, which I always thought was really cool, especially when he took over. I'm like, ooh, I like that. That's pretty cool. But man, tonight's episode, this was a fun episode. For a 3-hour show, it had nice pacing and just everything flowed. Like, it didn't feel like it was a chore to watch this episode. And of course, they had the advertisements for tomorrow night's NXT, if you can call it special. It's going up against AEW Dynamite, Title Tuesday, what have you. Both shows are stacked. I'm looking forward to it. But man, tonight's episode of Monday Night Raw, man, this was very promising. Just exciting and like a lot of enthusiasm. And of course, next week's Raw, man, that's going to be a fun Raw. It is the season premiere of Monday Night Raw, so they're gonna stack the deck. I'm really interested to see what's going to transpire on SmackDown this Friday with Roman Reigns returning, and of course, the following week, I believe. Is it this week or next week? I think this Friday is the season premiere, if they announce it. Forgive me. Comment below if it's the season premiere this Friday or next Friday, but man, this episode of Monday Night Raw, I really liked it. I'm going to jump right into what stood out to me the most. There's 5 things that stood out to me, but man, this was one of the major things, and I know myself and many other people have been asking, where are these people at? You know, we've seen them months ago. They're not injured. Are they injured? Where are they at? Are you bringing them in? And I gotta give WWE and Triple H kudos for, I don't want to say keeping them off TV, but developing something so when they do come on TV, you have something to run with. And that is the women's division on Raw tonight. I mean, tonight we saw Nia Jax, Shayna Baszler, Raquel Rodriguez, Rhea Ripley, Becky Lynch, Tegan Nox, Natalya, Candice LeRae, Indy Hartwell, Kaden and Quintana, Chelsea Green, Piper Niven, Xia Li, Valhalla, and Maxine Dupri. We saw all these women tonight on Raw, and granted, some of it was in the backstage segment, some of it was in a match, some of it was in a confrontation to set up a match next week. But nonetheless, like, there was an involvement. It was like, ooh, okay, they're here. Ooh, I didn't see that. It's like, okay, this is gonna be really good. I really like that. Many people have been asking about, of course, Shayna Baszler. You know, she had her little thing with Zoe Stark, and then she was not on TV for a couple weeks. Of course, Candice LeRae and Indy Hartwell, Kaden and Katana, Xia Li. You know, those women were like, where are they at? Like, we see them on social media and we don't see them on TV. Like, where are they at? And man, this is gonna be, I like this. This is pretty cool. I know that for a lot of fans, it did become somewhat frustrating to see the lack of women on Raw, because we're so accustomed to what WWE has presented in the last 10 years with the women's revolution. So it kind of felt like in the last year, 2 years, it's just like, where's the women at? Like, is it, okay, they're here, they're there. But we do got to keep this in mind that this is one show. So we do have to see how this plays out for Raw for the rest of the year going into Royal Rumble. And also, I thought about this before I started recording. Mind you, this was a good thing for Raw, but one of the major issues with the WWE Women's Division is how it's booked on SmackDown. That's a big issue. So this Friday, I'm really interested to see how they book the Women's Division and how it's presented and how it's integrated on the show. They did a really good job, I thought, of integrating the women in tonight's Monday Night Raw. So I'm really looking forward to seeing how they're going to integrate the women on SmackDown because it's SmackDown. Let's face it, it's basically the Bloodline and anybody else who's feuding with them. I mean, that's how it's been presented for the last 2.5 years with an occasional women's match. So see how they integrate the women on SmackDown. But tonight, I like this. Let's see, we had the Raquel Rodriguez versus Nia Jax match. It was a no contest because Rhea Ripley came in. She started brawling with both women. Then Shayna Baszler came in and they started brawling. Then you had this face-off between Shayna Baszler and Rhea Ripley, which I'm all for that. That is dope. So you had that start off. Then you had Becky Lynch being confronted by Xia Li for the NXT Championship. Then you had Tegan Nox and Becky Lynch. Very good match. Very good match. Those women really showcased their talents tonight, and it was a fun match. It was a fun match. It was a gritty match. It was a good coming out party for Tegan Nox. Of course, I really liked the video package that highlighted, why she was gone, because she suffered, 2 knee injuries and, recovering and coming back and everything. So I really liked that. But that was a really solid match. Then you had Candice LeRae and Indy Hartwell. They were talking to Adam Pearce. They get interrupted by Rhea Ripley. So you have a somewhat storyline there with Candice LeRae and Indy Hartwell with Rhea Ripley, because Rhea Ripley's the champ and Indy and Candice were interrupted. So you kind of have that dynamic there, which ties into possibly Johnny Gargano and Tommaso Ciampa against Judgment Day. That could be happening down the line. So that's real cool. I like that. It's like, okay, this is really cool. Then you had Tegan Nox. She was talking with Natalya. Natalya comes up to her. It was a great match. She's like, oh, it wasn't great. I lost. Kaden and Katana join. They start cheering up Tegan Nox. Then you get Chelsea Green and Piper Niven. Chelsea Green's being very condescending to Natalya. They go back and forth. Piper Niven's interrupts and she's like, well, if you want to do something, I'll challenge you to a fight next week. So apparently we're getting Piper Niven and Natalya next week. So that should be really cool. That was a really cool segment. But like I said, man, it was really good to see this large amount of the women's roster being integrated on Monday Night Raw. So let's see what happens next week on the season premiere, how it shapes out. Of course, like I said, I'm really interested to see how they integrate the women on SmackDown because let's face it, like I said, SmackDown women's roster has been presented and booked very pedestrian, where it's just like, all right, it's one match, it's here, and then it goes. Or there's been a couple SmackDown shows, there was like no women matches booked. It was just a segment and everything. So just see how this plays out. And of course, we got Charlotte, Bianca, and with all this integration on the women's with the women's roster on Raw, and then of course what could potentially happen on SmackDown. The big question is, how's Jade Cargill going to be integrated on Raw and SmackDown, and which branch is going to show up? So that's really very intriguing and interesting. And a lot of people have become fans of the women's roster due to the women's revolution that's happened within the last 10 years. So of course, myself and many others just like, hey, we're used to seeing like these dope angles and matches and feuds and you know this intricate storytelling and pacing and last 2 years it's just been very clunky and it's like and the same well the build has been like yeah. But let's see what happens from now going forward to the Royal Rumble. The next thing that really stood out to me was just the match card next week on Raw. You have Gunther versus Bronson Reed, who defeated Ricochet and Chad Gable in a fantastic match. Please go see that match. That was really cool. You have Gunther and Bronson Reed for the Intercontinental Championship. Man, that's a tough one. And the reason why I say it's a tough one because, man, Bronson Reed has been on a roll. Gunther has been on this fantastic run as Intercontinental Champion where he's broken the record for the longest reigning Intercontinental Champion. Like, there's so much there. This match with Bronson Reed reminds me of a few matches he had in New Japan. Mind you, people forget, Bronson Reed defeated Kazuchika Okada in New Japan Pro Wrestling. But this match reminds me of, or could potentially mimic in some ways, not exactly, but some ways, Bronson Reed's match with Tomohiro Ishii at, I think it was Impact Wrestling's No Surrender in 2022. He fought Tomohiro Ishii. That was a really good match. It was very physical. And I think this match next week is going to be very physical between Gunther and Bronson Reed. Man, that's going to be... excuse me, guys. That is going to be a fantastic match. Man, that match should probably go 15 minutes. 15, 20 minutes. Because that's going to be a slobber knocker. That's going to be, as they say now, the meat match and everything. I'm looking forward to that match. But like I said, man, it's tough. Is Gunther going to lose the title? Which I don't think he's going to lose on the season premiere of Raw. But then at the same time, man, Bronson Reed is a big dude. He's been on a roll. That should be a fun match to watch next week on Monday Night Raw. Gunther versus Bronson Reed. If anybody is a fan of Gunther, I don't know how you cannot be a fan of Gunther. He has put on some terrific matches. Excuse me. That I've been like, wow, this is a masterpiece. And he's gonna put on a show next week with Bronson Reed. Then we got Ricochet and Shinsuke Nakamura in a Falls Count Anywhere match. Of course, Shinsuke Nakamura attacked Ricochet while I was doing an interview. So you have that whole thing going on. So I don't know. We'll see how that goes. That should be a really good match. I do feel they've kind of gone back to that match because it was a few, like those who were feuding quite often on Raw, I think a couple months ago, and now they're going back to it. So it's just like, okay, it's cool. Ricochet it's like, Shinsuke has moved on from Seth for now. So it's like, Falls Count Anywhere, that should be fun. Maybe Ricochet does some crazy moonsault off of some height or table or something like that. He's very creative. That match should be pretty interesting. And then the match that, man, we should not sleep on this match or any match next week on Raw. Rhea Ripley versus Shayna Baszler. Ooh. Does that bring back some NXT Black and Gold like vibe? Because, man, that should be a good one. Of course, Rhea Ripley, she hasn't wrestled that much because of issues with her knee. But, man, nonetheless, man, that should be a fun match to watch. Shayna Baszler, they've been really presenting Shayna Baszler and presenting her like the Shayna Baszler from NXT that was just a 100% legit badass. That no nonsense, putting people, tapping out, everything. That should be really cool. Their interaction tonight, where that face off and they were just going at each other, just like, ooh. scripted. That should be a good one. Hopefully we don't get any outside interference from Raquel Rodriguez or Nia Jax, which, okay, a typical WWE trope is whenever you have an interference in a singles match, it turns into a tag team match. So I hope, fingers crossed, the Rhea Ripley Shayna Baszler match does not turn into a tag team match with Nia Jax and Rhea Ripley versus Raquel Rodriguez and Shayna Baszler. I hope that doesn't happen. Or I hope it doesn't turn into a fatal 4-way on Raw where, let's face it, this match, that fatal 4-way might actually happen at Crown Jewel. I don't know. We'll see. Speaking of Crown Jewel, the next thing that stood out to me tonight was Drew McIntyre. Yes, Drew McIntyre tonight really stood out. Man, I don't... the way he's been presented and the way his character has interacted with other characters. And I'm speaking of the character, but the way he's been presented, it's... I don't know. For me, it just feels like, man, is he... I know there's been talk about his contract expiring in 2024, but it's just like, man, is he about to leave? Because let me know, comment below how you feel about Drew McIntyre and how he's being presented and just how he's acting on TV. Is just like, man, is he about to leave? Is he going to New Japan, AEW? Like, where is he going? Is he re-signing? He's real. His character's very intriguing and interesting. Not only because of that aspect, but the way he's actually using, like, many people like to call it Kevin Owens logic. He started off, he challenged Seth Rollins at Crown Jewel. Seth Rollins, when he did the promo, he's like, "Oh, I expected you to attack me or anything." He's like, "No, I want you at 100%. I'll see you at Crown Jewel." He leaves. Damian Priest attacks Seth Rollins. He's beating him down. Dominic Mysterio's running down the aisle as Drew McIntyre is leaving. He stops Dominic Mysterio, and Dominic Mysterio's like, "What are you doing, man? We're cashing in." Drew McIntyre, he takes the briefcase, looks at it, and he kind of like, I don't know, it was really interesting. He did like a headbutt to briefcase to Dominic's head. I was like, all right, it works for me. So he prevented Damian Priest from cashing in the Money in the Bank. And of course, later on, speaking of Judgment Day, I'll go into that next. But, Rhea Ripley and Damian Priest, she mentioned, hold off on it. I got an idea. Never went into that, so it might relate to or correlate to Drew McIntyre. That should be really interesting. So he did that. Then he talks to Seth Rollins backstage, and Seth Rollins is like, "Man, why didn't you jump in or anything like that?" And things like that. He's like, "Well, I told you," and this is, granted, he may come off like he's turning heel, but it does make sense. He's like, "Hey, I told you I'm not getting in anybody's business. I did that last time, and I got, burned, blah, blah, blah." Then he mentions, the reason why I stopped Damian Priest from cashing in the Money in the Bank briefcase is because you saw what happened with the Bloodline, and, they ran roughshod, and 3 years, world champion. I don't want that on Raw. And it was like, ooh, that's a good attention to detail, because a lot of people have been saying that. And for Drew McIntyre to bring it up, it's like, you and Kevin Owens are pretty smart as far as, hey, we're wrestlers who actually pay attention to the show. We're not oblivious to it. So I like that. Then he confronts Jey Uso. And if you want to settle this, we can settle this right now. Sami Zayn interrupts. He's like, "Do we have an issue?" Like, no, he walks away. So he's just becoming the character, Drew McIntyre, is becoming very isolated. A man on an island to himself. It's really intriguing. And, the way his cadence is, the way he's talking, the way he's, like I said, it appears that he's turning heel, which, if you really pay attention, he's really not turning heel. He's just not involving themselves in a lot of stuff that he did prior to going on Raw. Going back the last year and everything, how he was feuding with the Bloodline and Clash at the Castle last year. So he's not doing that. So it's not necessarily not turning heel, but he's just not involving himself in a lot of things where he's being more strategic. Like, hey, if it doesn't pertain to me becoming WWE World Champion, then I'm not getting involved. It's just going to prevent me from being WWE World Champion. Then I'm getting involved. So, or WWE World Heavyweight Champion. So that makes sense. It's intriguing. Let's see where this goes. Could he be involved in War Games and that whole thing? Like, War Games is looking to be pretty interesting this year. I don't know. They haven't announced that they are going to have War Games at Survivor Series here in Chicago. That remains to be seen. One should anticipate that they're having War Games at Survivor Series. They've had it last year, and then NXT had it. So maybe that's in the works. I hope it is. That should be fun. Like I said, going into the Judgment Day, you had JD McDonagh in Judgment Day. He was getting choked out by Damian Priest. Priest does not like JD McDonagh. He wants to beat the hell out of him. Finn Balor and Rhea Ripley are stopping him like, no. Focus that on, getting the tag titles back. Remember, you have the Money in the Bank briefcase. And Rhea Ripley she's definitely the leader, but she's also this logic to the group where she's reminding Priest, hey, you may not have the tag titles, but you got the opportunity. You got the opportunity. Remember what's important. And that's really good. That's so good that you have this. And now what you're getting with Dominic Mysterio is he's not, since he lost the North American title, he's not that braggadocious character that he was, a few weeks ago. Now he's just like this serious, to the point, like, all right, whatever they say I'm going to do type vibe. Real interesting. Finn Balor, same thing, but it still has that feeling that it's leading to someone, maybe Damian Priest, either getting kicked out of the group or leaving the group. Could be one or two things. But when JD McDonagh was getting choked by Damian Priest and they stopped him, Rhea Ripley looks at him and she's like, you want to prove yourself? Defeat Drew McIntyre, which he did not. So he got defeated by Drew McIntyre. And, all Judgment Day was frustrated because it was because of him that Balor and Priest lost the WWE Undisputed Tag Titles to Jey Uso and Cody Rhodes. So you have that whole animosity thing, and that's a really interesting thing going on with Judgment Day and JD McDonagh, because of course it's like Balor and Priest, they have their tension, and Rhea Ripley has to calm down Damian Priest, and they had their tension last week. So it's just like, okay, someone's leaving or someone's getting kicked out. One of the two, and JD McDonagh is trying to get in. So this is really intriguing where this is going to go in the next couple of months. Could we get a WrestleMania match between Finn Balor and JD McDonagh? Who knows? That could be a possible match at WrestleMania, but we shall see going forward. Last but not least, Sammy, KO, Cody, and Jey Uso. They had their match tonight, and this was real interesting because when Cody and Jey Uso were talking, Sami Zayn comes out. I don't know if this was an error. Many people pointed out on social media. Sami Zayn came out to his if you can call it his heelish theme, where it wasn't, very high energetic. It was dan dan dan, like that real edgy. It was like, like did they play the wrong music? Or now that Triple H isn't creative, me thinking, I'm like, or was that a subtle tease? Or a foreshadowing of what's to come. So Sami Zayn, he congratulates both of them, and he's like, it is kind of hard to congratulate you when I know those titles should be ours. So you had that conflict and everything, and they're jaw-jacking and everything. That leads to a tag team match later on. And man, they had a really great tag team match. Cody Rhodes and Jey Uso versus KO and Sami Zayn. So you had, it was going back and forth for you had Cody Rhodes and Jey Uso defeat Sami Zayn and KO. All four men shake hands. They do their thing. Man, but it's real interesting, this storyline. And it's intriguing how with Cody Rhodes and Jey Uso, they have this tension with, or I wouldn't call it tension, but just competitive tension between KO and Sami Zayn. And then on SmackDown this past Friday, you had Jey Uso and Cody Rhodes come to the aid of John Cena and LA Knight versus the Bloodline and Judgment Day. So again, you have that issue with Judgment Day and the Bloodline somewhat having a merger with the Bloodline, which wasn't even referenced tonight on Raw, which I found very interesting. But of course, with Triple H and his booking, like, it's going to come back later on. But this is very interesting and very intriguing. I wonder how long Cody Rhodes and Jey Uso are going to hold the titles. Is this going to lead to Solo and Jimmy facing Cody and Jey Uso, which in turn they'll win the tag titles. By they win the tag titles, Solo and Jimmy, and then they drop the titles to another tag team, which eventually sets up a WrestleMania match between Jimmy Uso and Jey Uso. That could be something that happens down the line, but this was a great match tonight between Sami Zayn, Kevin Owens, and versus Cody Rhodes and Jey Uso. So I don't know. We'll see how this goes. And this whole dynamic between Cody and Jey Uso. Of course, Cody, if he drops the titles there, when is it going to get to the point where he faces Roman at WrestleMania? If he does. Of course, John Cena kind of hinted towards, if the actor strike ends, he can't do both. He's going to go back to acting. So you have that in question. Are we going to get Roman versus Rock at WrestleMania? So many moving parts that in some ways it is a cohesiveness to these moving parts, where even if something isn't there, you still have this other story to tell, which is really good to have as we head into Survivor Series, Royal Rumble, and then WrestleMania. I believe there's another Saudi event, and then also you have the strong rumors. I shouldn't say rumors, it's just speculation. And obviously, for me, I think it's a given that CM Punk is returning to WWE, more than likely at Survivor Series. So, if you do have CM Punk return, how does that play into the dynamic of the Bloodline, Cody Rhodes, Jey Uso, Roman Reigns type dynamic? That's going to be interesting. Or Seth Rollins, that whole thing. But man, tonight's Monday Night Raw, this was a fun show. It was entertaining. The pacing was great. They had a lot of involvement with the women's roster, a lot of integration with their storylines, with Drew McIntyre, the Judgment Day, Cody and Jey Uso, Sami and KO. Man, this is really fun. I gotta be honest, I'm actually more interested in WWE NXT and AEW Dynamite tomorrow night, because I am going to be watching both. Hopefully YouTube TV has the multi-view that they've had for multiple sports. Fingers crossed. Hopefully they have it. But man, WWE and Triple H, man, he's doing this is really good storytelling and more so story integration, and having this story and this story integrate, and then this story and this story integrates with these two stories, and then you move. Like, man, this is somewhat textbook old school storytelling in professional wrestling, which I like. And man, this is fun. And of course, as we get closer to Royal Rumble, things should amp up, and storylines that were kind of like, where is this going? We should find some direction of where it's headed towards WrestleMania. So it should be interesting. And man, if you haven't had a chance to watch tonight's Monday Night Raw, I recommend it. This was a fun show. This does not feel like 3 hours. The pacing was great. Matches were great. This was a fun show, and we'll see where this goes. Of course, Raw and NXT, they're looking to new TV rights or what have you, whether it's NBC Universal, maybe Amazon, maybe Disney. I don't know, but that is what's happening right now. But nonetheless, I enjoyed this show. I enjoyed Monday Night Raw. I enjoyed the stories, and there's several wrestlers on here that I really enjoy, whether they were in WWE or in other places. So we shall see what happens next week on the season premiere Monday Night Raw. We shall see what happens on SmackDown this Friday, and we should see what happens on NXT tomorrow. That should be pretty fun and pretty cool. So nonetheless, I had fun. This is my review for the October 9th episode of WWE Monday Night Raw. Follow me, Dedrian180, on TikTok, Twitter, X, Instagram, Threads, and other platforms you might find me. Make sure you like, subscribe, and follow City of Rasslin on Facebook, Instagram, Threads, Twitter X, and YouTube. Man, this is fun. With that, folks,